Welcome to a sixth episode of the Untitled Personal Podcast Project. I'm here joined again with Brian. Hey, Brian.
How are you? Good to be
Welcome
here.
back. Welcome back. And we got Matt back again for some more of this action.
How's it going?
We're trying to keep some good spirits up here. If you're watching this live, there's some events that are unfolding today in San Bernardino. 14 people dead, 17 injured in a mass shooting that is still kind of unfolding as far as we're kind of getting all these updates that police are starting to do reports and all the news agencies are starting to run around, but this is it's kind of a big deal. And a little bit before the show we were talking about, I was saying that I don't really remember the last time, but Matt reminded us that this Santa Barbara, which is actually closer to home there, so we've also dealing with that. So right now, of course, as is usual per the norm, we go through and we see on social media that there's a lot of clickbait titles, a lot of speculation. There's a lot of things being bounced around, and I don't know. I mean, normally this stuff doesn't really affect me, but this is kind of a big deal. I mean, I don't know. How about you guys? I mean, how were you guys hit by the information? I've been pretty dark all day. I had someone tell me, and then I'm just catching up, and it's just bringing me down.
I heard about the shooting happening about 20 minutes after it started, and then from then on till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was listening to the police radio scanner for San Bernardino. So I was listening to the cops talk to each other all day, pretty much, or at least for like 5 hours.
What did you hear? Like, what were some notable things that had come through listening to that all unfold?
Well, what was weird is they kept denying that, or saying we can't comment on if there was one shooter or three shooters. We can't comment on, or we don't know who's doing this and all that stuff. But within, it was around 11:40 a.m. that I heard a witness testimony over the police line saying that they knew the guy that did it. He was a county employee of some kind, or a state employee that they knew, and he was acting really weird, and then he left the room, and then 3 minutes later, the shooting started, and the same witness said that he saw one of the shooters, and it matched like the exact build of the guy he said he knew. And that was Farouk Saeed, or Saeed Farouk.
Yeah, I'm seeing that here as one of the suspects. They confirmed that recently, as of about 25 minutes ago. They have confirmed that this one suspect's name was Syed Farouk.
Yeah.
Now, what they haven't been able to put together is that they said, according to public record, he worked as an environmental. There is a Syed R. Farouk that worked as an environmental health specialist for San Bernardino County, but of course, as the news says, it's unclear whether this is the same person connected to the attack. That seems rather coincidental, I'd imagine. I mean,
yeah,
I hate to say that and just say like, oh, I believe it, but
I think I've seen two different Syed Farouks. One of them is actually Farouk Saeed, and then one of them Syed Farouk, and I guess one of them was working for State Board of Equalization, and then one of them, I guess, might have been working at that facility. I don't know which one it is, but it makes more sense if it was the guy working at the facility to me. But
this is always the roughest thing, like going through and reading, because
preliminary reports, yeah, they suck.
Right, it's and you know what, even witness accounts suck. I mean, we hear all the time about witness accounts saying this and that, and I mean, look at I mean, not that I know much about that either, but if you look at what happened in, of course now I can't remember. There's been so many. Not Freddie Gray. Not that was Baltimore.
You're thinking of Ferguson?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you look back to that, and you know they did their investigations, and everyone did their investigations. They all kind of came to the same conclusion. But if you go back and look at all the witness accounts that were all saying, like, you know, oh, he had his back to him and all of the stuff, and so now actually science comes in and does their investigations. They find that it's very difficult on both sides of it. It's you know, it's also difficult to fight confirmation bias, and you know, we see Syed Farouk, and now we're like, oh, you know, we start thinking terrorism, and then again, I think that's why news agencies and police agencies kind of they hold back, because they're still even getting the information, and if people are going out saying, oh, this was an act of terrorism, and then it turns out that it wasn't, it was something else. And then I guess you have to define, like, what's terrorism. Now it's domestic terrorism, and there's other kinds of terrorism, and it's like, you know, what is actually terrorism? I mean, I guess there's something that's actually listed somewhere.
I guess it's supposed to be politically motivated or religion motivated, where you want to scare people into accepting your ideology or whatever, pushing your ideology in some way.
What if you're a humanist?
That's terrorism.
I am shooting you for the freedom of your own thought. I don't know. Brian, what do you think?
You let me know how much humanist terrorism there is out there, and then we can talk about all that. You know, here's I started following this pretty early on, and obviously I think the world was pretty interested in the identity, because so much identity politics makes it into what these shootings are about. And that's a distraction, because I still think it's a gun issue. I don't care if the guy was black or Martian or a terrorist, that he or they, as I think it's now pretty solid that it was 3 people, one of them was female.
Yeah,
however,
two are dead, one in custody, and they're still trying to confirm that, but it seems pretty certain. Yeah.
However this came to be, and whatever their motives were, they had access to firearms, and you know, I could almost hear the collective sigh of relief across the sort of right-wing conservative people who were just waiting for them to be blamed again, and at length, for another white Christian terrorism, you know, shooter. I could hear them like, oh no, please don't let the guy be white. And then they weren't white, and there was like this, oh, at least he wasn't white. And now they can blame it on something else, right? Regardless if it was religious or whether it was just a work dispute, you know.
Well, that's one of the things, is that, and this seems to be pretty consistent across the board, is that this actually started at a holiday party, and there was some altercation. Well, okay, let me back up a bit. To say that this started that was a quotes. There was a holiday party, and some people got into some sort of an altercation. Some people left, and then shortly after, there was the shooting. And so they're trying to see if that has anything to do with it, or if it's just kind of a coincidence.
I don't think that can be part of it. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, you know, here's the thing. You know, we can go on and on about motive, but everybody wants to not talk about access. And here's the thing about motive. There will always be thousands of reasons that people want to shoot somebody else, right? There will always be that. And, you know, I don't, I'm not trying to relieve religion of the burden, whether these are religious. I don't want to leave mental health as the burden for these things, you know, why people have aggression. Certainly those things there's something to blame, right? Whether it's racial, whether it's religious, those are all impetuses. But ultimately, there's one thing that all of these things have in common, regardless if it's a religiously motivated or if it's terrorism motivated or if it's work issues or mental health. They all have access to guns, and it's like another instance where everybody wants to talk about everything else except the thing that they all absolutely have in common.
Yeah, I see.
We're not
that.
going to get rid of crazy, right? We're not going to get rid of reasons that people want to kill other people. That's a much more deeper part of our daily experience. But the one thing we can get rid of is how freely and available guns are. And I'm not even suggesting that we get rid of guns. I'm just saying there's all sorts of common sense things that we have been paralyzed into remaining inactive about.
I think that it's interesting across the board. I mean, you see, like, Paul Ryan comes in and immediately says that, the Colorado shooting should spur Congress to combat mental illness. So they do. It's kind of weird too, because before all of that, I think that I think mental illness is like the middle ground. I think that's kind of a place where people like myself would hang out, in between the fuck guns, fuck people who don't like guns. Like, I'm like right there in the middle where it's like, okay, well, there are issues here. We did what was in the 80s, early 90s, when they shut down all the mental institutions,
right?
And they pretty much just imprisoned them, and that's pretty much how it goes. And
yeah,
I mean, so I think my biggest problem is that both sides of the coin, of the definitive coin, rather not people in the middle. It doesn't seem like there's ever a conversation to be had to fix anything. It's more of, well, we're not going to have that conversation because we don't agree on where it starts. But then I step back and I go, okay, well, I don't know if this is true, but you see a lot of reports saying that this many mass shootings, apparently characterized as four or more people, including the shooter. I have to clarify that. Our country, like, we exceed the entire world.
Right.
So, like, what's different here that isn't everywhere else?
Well,
is it just guns?
No, and my answer is going to surprise you, because it's not just guns.
Was that a BuzzFeed kind of clickbait?
What? Oh yeah, there's a clickbait.
You'll be surprised what Brian's answer is next.
That cadence gets into your head.
It does.
Here's okay. We have a couple different issues, and this is just my take on it. We certainly have access to guns, greater access to guns, easier access to guns than almost anywhere else in the first world. And obviously, I'm sure if you go to Somalia or Afghanistan, you probably have more access to guns there. But amongst the civilized, civilized and first world are not the same thing. A lot of people don't realize this, but first world, I think the definition, you can check me on this, literally means that there are more white people than brown people. is the
really?
Definition. Yeah.
Really?
Let me look that up here.
First, yeah, look up the definition.
Okay, so just to Google, if I go to Google and type in first world definition, it does say the industrialized capitalist countries of Western Europe, North America, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand.
Oh, Japan's in there? Okay. Industrialized. All right.
That's funny, though. I mean, maybe they just threw Japan in there.
Look up third world. Third world, the definition of third world definitely has something about race.
And who's second world?
Third world has the developing... I know. Whatever. Why the skip?
It's just a skip.
Third world is the developing countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. I mean, granted, this is super shortened. This is the Google.
Okay. But the point is that in America we have more free access to guns than any other place. That's the part that I'm not saying is the sole reason, but that's the thing that to me just seems like the easiest thing to fix. There might be bigger problems, but I think that we have developed a cultural institution called mass shootings, and it's something that is present in our culture. It has grown out of the sort of the lone survivalist Western, sort of American frontiersmen of distrusting the government because you can do things, you're better. That's how this country was founded. People came here to escape the big government, and then they keep being pushed west and west for the entire American history. We have a streak of individualism in this country that is not present in other countries. And so what you've got is this head of a bunch of different cultural peculiarities in the American character that also have access to guns. And there is, this thing exists in a bunch of different other ways. Like, for example, there's a South Pacific island where the culture there is suicide. It's a real thing.
Japan has there's a forest that people go to.
Yeah,
it's well known for people to kill themselves there.
Right, I'm talking about that kind of suicide. There's an island, and I can't think of the name of the island, but there is this self-perpetuating culture of suicide amongst young teens, where the suicide rates there are way higher than anywhere else in the world. And what happens is when one teen kills himself, a bunch of other teams basically perform copycats. And what we've got, and the practice perpetuates because people see it, people see the aftermath, and then the image gets into their head and they follow suit. And I think in America we've got this sort of convergence of a bunch of different unique things about the American character, where a mass shooting, to some people, and not all people, but to some people, it gets in their head, and that's how they imagine sort of living out their lives. And it's sort of this self-perpetuating thing. And I've seen this graphic all day today on the nets of this, this timeline where each mass shooting is plotted on a timeline, and as it gets closer to present day, you just see the dots go bup, 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 bup. You know what I mean? It's more and more common, and I think that we've got this, like I said, this almost, I'd call it mass hysteria, but I think it's very specific, where it gets into a very specific set of people's heads. It seems to run the gamut from crazy people to religious people to just people that are having a terrible day.
So to kind of summarize, you're saying that it's that there is room for the middle ground, and I think that's kind of what I was pointing out too before, is that it's a gun issue, was what you're saying, and then there's also other issues. It's kind of like
it's a cultural issue.
We're talking about being able to help refugees and the vets. Why not do them both? That was last week's, or even the week before that's post. You see a lot of that. And it's like, well, why can't we do both? It's actually handled. I mean, they're both handled by different budgets. They're both handled by different things. Why, we send all kinds of money overseas through wars and aid, and why not be able to do both? So and so that's what I was saying before too. Is that I think that mental illness seems to be this happy middle ground where it kind of makes you look like you're addressing the issue. For those who don't want to, and then for those who would lean more toward it being a gun problem, they use the mental illness thing to kind of avoid confrontation from those who are really, really for it.
And here's my problem with the mental issue thing. Since we're talking about it specifically, we did, was it 40 years ago, just completely disable the mental the health system in this country. We got rid of all the hospitals. We kicked everybody out in the street. We had these, people wandering the streets, and now they're law enforcement issues and not mental health issues. The problem I have with anybody who wants to sort of jump onto the safe, the sort of safe spot of mental health to avoid the discussion of guns, I want to say to them, great, what's your proposal for fixing that mental health issues? You know what I mean? If you say if it's Paul Ryan,
right,
the guy who wants to cut everything from the budget, you if you want to say it's mental health, great, show us in your budget where you're going to fix that problem.
That is a good point.
If it's Donald Trump, great, Donald Trump, how come mental health isn't coming out of your mouth every day of the year and not just the day after mass shootings? You know what I mean? If you want to go there, then go there, and then let's fix the problem while you're there.
Yeah, I totally saw, and that when I saw Paul Ryan, I just remember all of his voucher programs and all of the things that were being proposed when he was running with Romney, and I'm like, wait, you think that we need to fix mental health problems, but I know that you don't want to spend money on it. I know that you want to just stop spending money on everything, pretty much. So how... I do want to come back to that, because that's a really good point, is the solution part of it. again, going back to both sides don't want to really have or can't have a conversation even because they don't start from the same place, and it feels like, well, if you're not going to start from the same place, then we're not going to go anywhere anyway, and it's kind of like self-defeating. But
Right.
Matt, from your vantage point, I mean, we have a mental health problem. We don't have any mental hospitals. We have maybe, what is it, Vista Del Mar, where people who they have drug problems, and it's not efficient what we have.
Yeah.
But guns being a very prevalent thing, we own more guns than we have people. We own more guns than what is it, like the top 4 countries combined. I mean, we have a lot of I was reading earlier that during the holiday season, we've sold more guns this holiday season than any other holiday season. I mean, we are guns, man, like America.
Yeah. As for the gun issue, and the rapid sales recently, I think that has to do with the Colorado Colorado Springs shooter.
I guess it's well-timed.
And then Obama saying we need to take harder action. Everybody, when they hear that, if they've been thinking of buying a gun or they have guns but they think they need more ammo, they're going to rush out and get more as soon as they can before those potential new laws or executive actions go through, taking their abilities away to get those guns that they think they need to protect themselves. As for taking away guns, like identifying them as the problem, this may shock you. I agree that that guns, when they're used in this fashion and pretty much in most fashions, it is cowardice. It's a cowardly position. I mean, it takes a lot more balls to go up to someone with your fists or even a knife and do something than it does to use a gun. You get to be far away. It's kind of like droning people,
Yeah, right.
Drone strike. It's just a cowardly position. However, I don't think that it would ever be a wise policy to try to take guns away, or, I mean, maybe you could dry out the ammo over time, like say no more ammo unless it's all registered, or make ammo so prohibitively expensive that it dries out over time. That would be one way to do it. But going after people's guns won't work because there's over 300 million guns in this country.
Right.
And you can't go house to house and take guns, especially from people that look to the Second Amendment and the Constitution and just their ability to defend themselves without the law.
Well, that's where
they're not gonna allow their guns to be taken. They're gonna fight back, and that's just gonna cause a lot more bloodshed, in my opinion.
Well, that's where I lean on this other side, where it's like, okay, well, you always hear they always say we're not going to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. We're not going to do this or that. A lot of these people that have been in these mass shootings haven't. Some of them have, but it seems like the majority of them don't have prior criminal histories that would cause people to go, hey, this guy shouldn't have a gun. I mean, the Deer, I think is the Colorado guy.
Yeah.
They were going through, and I mean, he's had some run-ins with the law, but it's been like kind of disturbing people. It hasn't really been like violent or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just been a creepy guy. That's all it's been.
So when you're going and talking about solutions, Brian, going back to the solution side of it, it's like it doesn't seem like either side really has solutions. They just have like what they want to hold on. Like one side is a math problem. You get rid of guns, sure. It's like getting rid of McDonald's and all fat. Eventually people will start losing weight, but at what price? I guess that's the cost, and that's where I think the other side is. It's like, okay, well, what is your solution? How are you going to keep the guy who just shot up San Bernardino from having weapons? But how can I still have them? Because I'm not a crazy person. So what's the deal? Where's the balance?
Let me respond by saying that this is not a problem that's going to go away, right? or at least in any reasonable sense, there's no way to drop these numbers to zero. I would be happy with starting to jump them by percentages, increments where we could see mass shootings become a rare thing. And it seems as though what has been the roadblock to all of this is the NRA policy of all or nothing, right? That they don't want to give an inch because they see the mile that is being planned. And I think that is the issue here, that zero movement has been made on anything when dozens and dozens of common sense things would begin to slowly change the culture, slowly affect things. And you could look at any one of these things and say, well, this law and this law and this law wouldn't have done anything to that. However, if you look at a different case, maybe those laws would have had an effect. And then just lowering the tension overall would have an effect.
Well, kind of. Oh, sorry.
No, I was to say, incrementally. And again, back to my original point, I think that we have a very unique cultural sort of self-perpetuating thing where it's we all watch a mass shooting on television, and most people are horrified by it. And yet the seeds of the next mass shooting are in the brain of the one person who watches it and says, I see myself doing that. And it only takes one, because then that guy does it and then somebody else does it. So it's a very small percentage of people. I mean, we're talking about, hundreds, thousands of a percent of the total population. But what happens are these things grab headlines. And what I think is there needs to be like a break, right? If we start to reduce these things from happening by doing the things that are common sense, making sure that people with felonies don't get them, making sure with people with a history of violence don't get them, making sure that people with a history of mental instability don't get them. What we do is we slowly chip away at the numbers. And so instead of
the easy stuff first,
easy stuff first.
You're not talking about solving the mass shooting first. This is more like let's catch everything else up.
Right. If we always think of this as an all or nothing solution, we're not prepared for all right now. We're not prepared for knocking on everybody's doors and taking guns. And as long as we still think of that as the end game, it's never going to happen, right? We're never going to remove. We're not in a spot right now where we're going to go door to door knocking and taking guns away from people. And that's a straw man that the people who support the Second Amendment rights and the guns and the NRA love to talk about because they know it's impossible. And as long as people say, well, that's not going to happen, then we throw our arms up. But if we make sure that any database that gets reviewed cross-checks mental health records across state lines, for example, we'll know that a guy who's a crazy in Virginia can't drive to Delaware and buy a gun. That would solve it by an increment.
That's a really good point, too.
If we close the gun show loop, where people, right now, if you go to a gun store and buy a gun, there's a 10-day waiting period, which a lot of people call the cooling off period, like you're super angry about something.
Is he still here?
Yeah, I think Brian, you froze up. I'm gonna switch over to Matt though.
Okay, but to add to his gun show loophole, yeah, you can go and buy parts for guns and build your own without ever having to really register it.
Well, this reminds me of the MakerBot. People found a way to make that, and that was a twofold thing. As one, that they were able to make parts, but two, it was all made out of plastic. So
Correct.
that makes it difficult to.
Well, and then people can also mill out if they have metal machine tools, metal working tools. They can mill out their own little portion of it that does need to be registered. They can make their own. Yeah, we're here, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry, I froze up. I I don't know what you guys have gotten up to in the last 30 seconds. My thing was frozen.
Matt, actually, your video is still. It looks like it's still a little frozen. Yeah, so I think your video is catching up, but yeah, it looks like he'll be back. Brian will be back after these messages. No, so again, we're going back to that solutions thing, and
I have ideas. So.
Yeah, well, okay, and let's get to that. When Brian comes back on, I'd like to get to that, because I think the solutions part of it. For instance, I look at this. It's like Obama. If Obama could do anything, don't you think he would have done something by now? I think he's kind of powerless in all of this.
Well, it
seems like he can't do anything.
He's done some. Actually, he shut down the recycling plant that did reloads for military ammo. So our government was they'd buy ammo, but then they'd reload it on their own and then reuse it for the military. That took a lot of pressure off of the private ammo sales, or that had taken a lot of pressure off. But once he got rid of it, that made the price of ammo jump, because now the military is buying from private sources, as are domestic sales. So he kind of made it more expensive for people to get ammo, but that really doesn't solve the problem. I don't know. I think he's done some, but yeah, it pretty much all new changes to gun laws have not really had any effect on people's
ability. It seems to just have like a market effect.
Yeah.
It seems like it's basically like, I think of Chris Rock. There was a routine. I think it was I don't remember. I don't remember which one it was. It was the one with the album that.
He talks about a $5,000 bullet.
Bullet, exactly. Have bullet control. Just make bullets really expensive.
You gotta really make somebody angry.
Yeah, exactly.
Go buy a bullet.
It's like the Second Amendment says you can have guns. It doesn't necessarily say you can have ammo. I guess. I don't know. That speaks to the slippery slope, though, because I think that's the argument that everyone ends up into, is the slippery slope argument. It's like, okay, well, we say we go for the mental health thing. So what's to say the government isn't going to say that you have some kind of mental issue? There are people that have genuine fears, and you know what? We're not the cleanest country in the world, so like there are people who have genuine fears that, this slippery slope argument, which I'm not really a fan of slippery slope arguments, because it's kind of that, to me, that's like giving up the good for the great. Like, oh, it's not perfect, so let's just not eat. I don't like bread, but I'll just starve to death because I don't like bread. It just seems. Slippery slope arguments there's a lot of fear involved, and unfortunately, understandably so in some cases. I mean,
it does threaten your First Amendment rights to have the government be able to determine who's crazy and who isn't crazy.
Right.
Who can be locked up and who can't be locked up. They're doing it in France right now, and they've been doing it in the U.S. for a few years, maybe more. But they've been locking up conspiracy theorists here and in France because some conspiracy theorists are saying stuff that the government thinks is anti-establishmentarianist or something like that.
Yeah.
And it threatens them, and they go, "Oh no, you're just crazy," and they lock them up. That's a huge violation.
That's something that I'm surprised isn't more covered in the news here. Is that like France is under government rule. I mean, they've no more protests, and the people have been protesting. I don't know if you guys saw the picture of people protesting. They put their shoes out in front, and they all left because you can't assemble anymore. You can't do anything. And I get it. Like they're following up. I mean, they're trying they're still trying to button up that whole thing. This didn't happen so long ago. So I'm surprised that the country that is like the bastion of freedom in all conversations. I mean, where Statue of Liberty came from them, and now they're like it's like they've clamped down. Brian, you've You go for it.
I was going to say, what's different about how we gave the government powers through the Patriot Act after 9/11?
Hey, I am not backing that at all.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
right there.
listen, I love my country, right? I love the place and the people. I'm not an immediate rah-rah fan of the institutions, and I think they're imperfect. And you know, I like the tenets that this country was founded on. But like anything, the freedom that we enjoy in this country comes with the price of being vigilant. That used to be the argument for why we needed so many guns, but these days it's the argument for why we need so much independent journalism, right? We need to be following these people, and we have at least the structure in place that when we find these things, when daylight is shown on these issues, we still try and fix them, right? Like when Edward Snowden released the information that the NSA was gathering. You know, it was long and it was bloody and it's not over yet, but there are things being done now to address that, and it was an embarrassing thing, and I think Edward Snowden made a lot of really good points about you know, our freedoms and how we address them. The issue is that the government does have a lot of power to do things, you know, but ultimately when the government oversteps its bounds, the institutions still exist to address that.
Right.
And if somebody's going to get into things like disappearing people and locking up people for reasons that they don't deserve, those are wrong, right? And like I said, the institutions still exist to address that. We can't defend that, and you can't. But you also can't. You can't say that that's the government as written, right? Those are
not at all.
Criminals. Those are criminals doing those things.
Yeah.
And if we out those criminals, we still can send them to jail. And so you can't just say the government and also list all the things that criminals in the government are doing as the same monolith, right? And
Right.
so if people are being put away, those are criminals and not the government, because the government is still written on a piece of paper called the Constitution, and we still have to abide by that. But, you know, the things like mental health and all of those, there are plenty of organizations that, you know, keep stats on that, that publish reports. The government, you know, again, that monolith, the government, quote unquote, can do a lot of things, but it can't invent its own statistics put out by people that they don't control. There are still people invested in being watchdogs and calling in those things.
I do have to respond to that because that's a very important point, I think. True, we can't... There are plenty of agencies out there doing polling and independent polling, right? Not mainstream media polling. They're not government-controlled polling. It's just they're doing their independent polling. They have independent journalists and then conspiracy theorists, which is basically just a group of people that go through what they've already been told and find the parts that don't add up, you know. And then they try to say, okay, well, obviously there's a lie here. What is the truth? And then they start trying to think of different, you know, trying to make connections to figure out what the truth is. That's all a conspiracy theorist is in my mind. But the problem is independent sources and conspiracy theorists, independent polling agencies, they have no power, really. They can wake a few people up, but I think the public as a whole, when they if they don't hear it from an official, so-called official source like Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, it loses credibility.
It's like a marketing problem.
They don't think it's true because these big agencies that they trust for whatever reason are not repeating what this smaller outfit found. what the smaller newspaper or whatever found.
Well, my only...
if they don't do that, then it loses credibility in a lot of people's minds, and that's why, even though there's plenty of information out there showing how the government is corrupt in this way and that way, and how things are going wrong, they don't, unless it's told to them by these mainstream sources or the government, they just don't believe it. And I don't think government is the solution at all. I don't think we can find the solution in government. The solution is you and me. The solution is, in my opinion, focus on more pacifism-based ideologies and religion. Now, I know you guys wouldn't be comfortable pushing religion, but ideology, sure.
Yeah, I guess, I mean...
Pacifist ideology.
It's possible, yeah, right. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself apathetic in any way, but I can see how, like, I think about war, for instance. I like the idea of bringing everyone home and let's just kind of reset. We have been at war since World War II. We have been somewhere shooting someone since World War II, and maybe even before that. But I'm reiterating many different publications identifying the same thing. We are constantly at war. It would be nice, and you kind of wonder. I mean, if you think about the way that some people think about us overseas, is that we love war. We're always somewhere telling someone to do something different or do something the way that we would do it. We are the world's police. And I don't know at what point, well, I'm pretty sure I know it's when, the atomic bomb is pretty much what turned us into the world police, because we're like, hey, we got it, and we will use it. Oddly enough, we're the only ones who have used it on other people, but we're always so afraid of other people getting access to it. So it's kind of like, it almost seems that, like, our culture is used to it, the idea that, well, we're just going to go change it, and the way we change it is actively, not passively. And I think, it's stand up for yourselves. And then if you don't stand up for yourself, then the rest of everyone just kind of eats you alive. That's kind of the impression that I get. So, I mean, that's not a gun issue. That's an aggression issue. And I think I'm kind of, unfortunately, for my standpoint in life, I think I might be mimicking, what was it, Huckabee or something like that, where he said something like that, where he's like, we suffer from a sin issue, is what he says. And I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I would just say that we are aggressive. But now I'm thinking football. I was about to use football as a reference. If you ever been through high school, you know that football is like the contentious thing, especially in America. But then now I think about World Cup, and I think the rest of the world has.
Right.
So,
Greg, you have backed into what is the crux of this, right? And here, let me tie this all into a bow. You're right that we have become the world police, and we become the world police because we have the biggest, baddest army. But like anything, we have, if you're the best player in the game, right? Any game, football or anything, you find that so many things tend to automatically be defaulted to you, right? You want to talk about to continue the sports analogy, the Tom Brady's. You know what I mean? If you
they're the team captains.
I'm not a sports person, so I struggle with sports analogies. But what I'm saying is, if you're the biggest, baddest anything, you automatically here's one I know. Boxing. Ties go to they go to the champ, right? If you have oh, you didn't know that? Oh yeah.
I mean, you say you don't know much about sports. I played tennis. I played tennis really well.
Yeah, but if you're, I'll play it. Right? Wrestling the same way. If you're the champion, you have to beat the champion in order to become the champion. If you tie, the champion still retains the title. And in a way, because we are the biggest, baddest person on the block with the biggest economy and all of that, so much of what the world does automatically defaults to America. And it's shocking sometimes to get outside of America and to realize that there's a whole world out there with all sorts of other stuff that happens that has nothing to do with us, because from inside, it just seems that everybody is reflecting back to us what we want. And then here's the issue. When we run up against people that have things that we want, if they are friendly to us, we are friends. But if they are antagonistic to us in any sense of the word, we instantly cast them as enemies, because whether or not they are truly enemies, being against us means that we don't get what we want. And I'm changing now into our economic dominance around the world.
Like the colonialism side of things.
Well, that's essentially where it starts. And the thing is if you want to take a look at all of the Middle Eastern jihadi, all of that stuff, we can talk about religion all day long, but at the end of the day, there's something over there that we want that is the fundamental lifeblood to our economic process as we've set it up here in America, which is oil.
Not as well as of today. It's like $40 a barrel. Remember when it was like $130?
It's going the other. Sure, it's going the other way. But what I'm saying is that ultimately, all of these fights are fights about resources, and we have just had the luxury of always being the winning dog in the fight since World War II. And I don't think for those people that have a moral issue with always needing to assume that, like I'm one. I don't automatically assume that we're always right, American, right? That's one thing that I don't always assume, but a lot of people do.
Yeah, there's an American well, I think that's what it is. It's the American exceptionalism.
That's what it is.
We're used to getting picked to be the team captain, or at least first picked when someone else is picking a team. We're used to. Right. I think though it's in a way we maybe have flipped from being. It's like being the nerd in high school. Being the nerd in high school, everyone just thought you were the nerd in high school. Wow, Greg, why are you online all the time? Who would ever want to be online all the time? And now here we are, fast forward to now, and I get asked every single computer question under the sun, and I kind of feel that America is turning into that computer guy who was cool at one point, but now everyone sees that he's useful, and now he's just like, oh, well, here I go. I guess I got to go spend another $1 billion or $1 trillion fighting this war or that war. But then at the same time, like you said, you look at every game, every real-time strategy game is all about controlling resource, so that way you can build the big army, so that way you can take out the other side. I mean, that's the basis of every game, real-time strategy game you play. So, I mean, there's a reason why that is. I guess it's kind of like the natural order. But what's the solutions? Like what? So let's kind of go back to that side of things. Oh, Matt, please.
Well, go ahead.
Go on. Okay. As for this shooting, though, I don't think it's mental illness related. There were 3 people involved, so that sounds more like an organized event of some kind, probably terrorism-based, ideology-based, something like that. Maybe it was a dispute with the family and the hospital, or something like that, or the center, whatever it is, for developmentally disabled people. One thing that I did not hear over the police radio today, so I might be wrong assuming that it was Islamic terrorism. Maybe it's just a family beef of some kind. They never said like Allahu Akbar or any of the the trademark
stuff. Right.
Yeah, things.
You have to give them that. At least you know if it's marked as that, because that's kind of part of the shtick, right? Like, at least like if you're not hearing Allah Akbar, you're good. I don't know if that's insensitive for me to say, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there.
Right. Right. And so I think generally, mental illness and our media, our media helps the copycat, helps push the copycat thing. You publicize it more, you give some guy some fame, because he shot up some school or whatever, and other guys are going to copycat it for the same fame. I think it would help if our media didn't do that. And then also, I think it would help if our media was less focused on violence and decadence and stuff like that. And me. It seems like we're in the culture of me to me. But maybe.
Well, yeah, I think I always thought the culture of me, and that you always hear people talk about our generation being like the narcissistic generation, the we want everything generation, and I always counter that with being, we grew up with options, and it wasn't options that other people necessarily directly provided us. We had technology. We were able to have technology find the options for us. I can go and do a Google search right now. I've had Google from high school is when Google came out for me. So since high school, I've had unlimited access to information and options, and I rarely had to. Well, I guess I had to work. You become better at searching. For instance, keyword searches or using my SEO terminology, like long tail keywords, things, actual questions that people ask, rather than just searching people. Specific answer for that, or a better answer for that. So, not to derail too much, but that's where I get that entitlement, quote unquote, generation. I think it's just more of a high expectation than anything else. But I mean, going through it, I'm looking through here. There's someone who was talking to some students in China. They were asking, if they thought if anyone being allowed to walk into the store to buy a gun, they thought that it was dangerous and unsafe. And then again, it goes back down to the, we want to prevent guns from ending up in the hands of dangerous people. And this, I'm going to spin it back around. Is like, so what's the solution? What is something that can be brought to the table that can make sense to all sides?
And every person is potentially dangerous. Like you were saying earlier, almost all of the shootings that have happened recently were with people that didn't have any background like that. Like the government would have no reason to take their guns because there's nothing in their record.
But Brian, what you were pointing out earlier is that, well, maybe there are shootings that we're not tracking on this mass shooting scale that would end up saving other lives.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So is the solution to increment? Oh.
Yeah, I got cut off earlier. My internet did something wacky. But, I mean, to finish that point, which was just to say we get something out of incrementally reducing this. And you add up the increments after a while, and they get better. And I don't know any other scenario where we've just have some magic solution that solves everything. We got to start working. And we have been frozen in this regard because so many people just want to talk about the lining up guns and taking them straight from our doors.
Well, that's the news' fault. They're trying to make money. I mean, that's Entertainment Tonight.
It's the news. It's that. It's certainly the NRA, I think, is the largest culprit in this. But it's also our individualist spirit, right? Nobody wants to be told what to do in this country because we think that we have all of these rights. And I think that people, we have this sense about us that we're special and that we need to preserve that. And I understand why people want to preserve that idea. It's nice thinking that you are somehow are carved out from very different stuff than everybody else. But, getting at the root of American exceptionalism is like, hey, we need to start comporting with the norms of the rest of the world because we, A, can't afford to be exceptional. Our dime is running out in that sense. In a world sense, you know what I mean? We're arriving at a point at which American exceptionalism isn't getting us places. We're through no fault of our own. Our advantage is wearing out. We've done a lot of damage to our own reputation around the world. the economic might that has funded all of this is coming to an end, and it's going to be a hard adjustment when we have to play by the same rules as everybody else.
Well, look at us even internally. Internally, we're divided. I mean, internally, the half of the country, just to throw random percentages out there, but half the country agrees with the people overseas about, you know, America being weak, or they might have different motives, they might have different people to blame, but that's kind of we're so divided ourselves. And I don't know. I mean, Matt, you mention a lot, have mentioned often, both on this show and offline in our own conversations, how, you know, the idea of this world government type thing. You know, we're right now, like Germany is expected to jump on board tomorrow to start bombing ISIS establishments, and so, you know, we had France, Britain today, just after like 11 hours of debate, finally decided that they're going to start bombing as well. So it's like,
I don't believe that the U.S. is controlled by the people of the U.S. The same with most of the world.
Do you think maybe it's rich Americans, at least? I mean, we do have a lot of rich people.
I've already told you before who I think it is at the top. You know, who's at the top of the power pyramid of the world. And I'm pretty sure it's the Vatican and the Jesuits. And you'd really have to do a lot of research in history, or like in history, just to
I wouldn't put it past them
where I'm coming from.
I mean, if you look at just the things that on the surface, without digging deep, you look at like the Illuminati, the Freemasons being you know, involved with that as. So you look at all the popular stories that people know about. On top of the fact that, I mean, the Catholic Church has got to have a lot of money. I mean,
they do. They have more
as far
money
as
than any country in the world.
is Catholicism the biggest sect of Christianity, or well, as
that's another debate, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, they are.
I mean,
they have the greatest number around the world. You know, if you're to compare it to Protestants, they have more.
Catholicism. Let's see. Christian religion is the largest religion of the world. See, that's the thing. It says Catholicism is just one part of Christian religion. This is difficult to separate. 2.2 billion Christians, 1.6 billion Muslims, and then there's the rest. Which is weird, too, because we have 7 billion people, so this only accounts for less than half. Well, there's 3.8. Well, that's as of 2012, so even still, 3.8. I guess that'd be a little more than half. But then, what's the rest? Hindu?
It's Hindu, and then there's probably forced non-religious, like in China.
I think there's a lot more humanists out there. This one's for you, Brian. No, I actually I was listening to Dawkins' debate the other day, and how they were saying that they were talking about or he was mentioning how there's probably a much higher number of people out there that that by definition would be considered atheist or agnostic. He admits that in America, atheist means something completely different than what it means elsewhere. It really is more of like an agnosticism, skepticism probably would be a good way of putting it. But that there's a lot more, but there's a lot of fear as to the repercussions of saying, like, full on, I'm an atheist, or anything that is contrary to kind of the popular
philosophically wrong. I mean, you can't prove that there is no God, so why are you saying there's no God? That's the main
in
America.
In America, that is more of an argument than it is overseas. Overseas,
I know.
don't see it that way. It's weird. I mean, I only know from my American standpoint that it's very difficult to take any stance that is against the notion that a God or a deity exists. So, Brian, you probably have a lot more experience in this. I don't go to the meetings. So, to me, that would be like going to church, right?
Let me talk. Yeah. Let me talk about Star Wars for a second.
Okay.
All right. So there's the anthropomorphic evolutionary theory in Star Wars, and it goes like this. In Star Wars, almost all the characters are humanoid figures with alien heads and colorings, right? It's Star Trek, very similar. Why is that? And it's because humanoids, actual humanoids, humans, Homo sapiens, people that look like us, were the first civilization to develop warp drive. And because they developed warp drive first, they were able to.
Is this Star Trek?
No. This is Star Wars.
Because
but it applies to Star Trek.
Yeah, I got you.
It's almost.
I mean, this is semantics
it's
here.
universal.
There's no dilithium crystals.
No, right. but follow me here. So I never really thought about it before. I've read this in the context of Star Wars, but it works for Star Trek just the same. Hyperdrive. Warp drive is Star Trek. Hyperdrive is Star Wars.
Right.
But the human Homo sapiens, people that are essentially human-looking, were the first civilization to develop faster than light travel. And because of that, they were able to essentially spread their culture and their technology across the universe thousands upon thousands of years before any other culture was, by accident or whatever, history. And any species that hoped to have any kind of presence in a galactic sense needed to be able to use humanoid technology. And therefore, the species that were able to step up and have a presence in a galactic sense and not just be stuck on their own home planets were those species that evolved humanoid appendages so they could use human technology. They could turn a screwdriver, they could hold a hammer, they can press a gas pedal, they can fire a gun. So the humanoid form followed the technology that humans themselves created. Are you guys following me here?
Yeah. At first, I was kind of trailing off, but I see kind of see where you're going.
See where I'm going with this? Okay. The Twi'lek, which is that tooth thing, that thing that answers the door in Return of the Jedi. He's actually a worm, a sentient worm, and the face that it's got on its face is not its real face. It's a face that it is developed in order to converse with humans, because those species, those intergalactic species that were able to maintain relationships with humans, use human technology, were the only species that were able to propagate themselves through the galaxy. All of this is mean to say that Christianity on this planet, white, male, the patriarchy, the Christian patriarchy, Catholicism, if you want to start there, was the first to develop an imperial strategy, to develop the technologies that allowed them to spread their culture around the world. And the only cultures that have managed to compete are those ones, the only peoples that have managed to compete on this planet are those who have basically bought into that system. And
that's not really.
Hold on. Okay, and so that's why, even though the Christians, in this scenario, the Christianity in the allegory here isn't any more right than anything else. Just like the humanoids in the Star Trek or Star Wars universe aren't any more legitimate than any other species. They're the person that had the stuff, the industry, the power, the political acumen to dominate the planet, and that's why they remain a political force. It's English that spread across the globe. It's Christianity that touched down in every continent. It's our particular business institutions that have been the most dominant because they were the first, and they were able to go out, and any other culture, Chinese, the Japanese, Asia, the Middle East, they needed to conform to that, and why you think that the Jesuits and the Catholic Church and the Illuminati, it's not that they're any better or any more legitimate. It's that they were the first. And being.
Do you think that being within this is that? Do you think that being the first is the legitimacy part? Do you think that it's kind of like they?
It gives you so much more weight that you can it's like it's why everybody has a copy, regardless if they use it or not, of Internet Explorer, because Microsoft
it's Edge now.
Right. They shipped it as part of the platform, and if you get to be first, if you get to be the default setting, you instantly have an immense advantage over any other competitor.
So are you saying that like Firefox would be more akin to being like the Muslim religion, and then Chrome is like the humanist side of things? Where
I would agree with that. That seems to be just fine. But what I'm saying is being first, being the default setting, gives you so many more advantages and sets it so that as you walk across the Earth or fly across the galaxy, you find so many more things that just comport with the way you're used to operating. I visit Europe on the regular, and I love it that I can be dropped into a small town in the middle of the Netherlands and know that I will find somebody who speaks English.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
because it's the dominant language. Regardless if it's historically accurate there, I know I can go there and speak English because it's dominant language. It makes life easier for me, and that's just one dude. You know what I'm saying? So imagine an entire culture
like a construct,
knowing it could almost go anywhere on the world. Maybe that's coming to an end. Maybe that's the thing. That maybe we need to get used to brown faces having something to say about that. But I think that culturally American Western culture, English culture, European culture, which is essentially American culture, kind of, it has run. It has been dominant, and by default, it's been the first across this planet.
Matt, what do you think? Do you feel? I mean, I get Brian's point that as far as Christianity, and this might be our perspective from being Americans, because I think. You go to England, the Church of Britain, Church of England, rather. There is no such thing in other countries. Well, I shouldn't say that definitively, but the way that our political right and political lefts work, it's just weird because political right here is associated with religion. At least for me, that's the first thing I go is like, okay, political right, they're going to be the first ones to. There's no one on the democracy, on the Democrat side that speaks the way that Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee. That's just not a thing. However, Democrats are just as Christian as Republicans. I mean, or Catholic, depending again on the debate. But do you think that Christianity has always been dominant, and that's where we are now?
Well, okay, it's wrong to say that Christianity has always been dominant. And it's also wrong to say that Christianity is a white religion. It started out as a religion of Jews, of Arabs, of Greeks, of Asians, and Africans. Actually, it wasn't until about the 800 to 1200 AD era that it actually moved into white areas. What happened was scripture-based Christianity, actual Christianity, as some people might call it, was annihilated. The people were slaughtered and murdered by Catholics because their fascism-based so-called Christianity, they went out and, I mean, they can't have anybody disagreeing with them or saying that they're wrong or not bowing to the Pope, as all modern leaders of the world do today. They go to the Vatican and bow before him and kiss his ring because he's the leader of the world.
Nobody washes that in between.
What's that?
hope he washes it.
I do too. Well, no, I don't. I hope he gets some sick disease. But I know I'm an evil person in that regard.
Staph
I
infection
hate
is
the
on all
Pope.
of
I
us.
hate the Pope. Anyway, so the Catholics murder. They murder. They continue to murder. They'll continue to murder until they have the whole globe under their fascist control. So it's wrong to say that Christianity is a white religion, especially since the greatest gains in Christianity over the past 20 years have been in Asia and Africa. And I think that there are probably more Christians in Africa now than there are in the U.S. Anyway, well, maybe not, considering the population of Africa right now. But
well, yeah,
they've had huge gains in Christianity there.
Can I
And in
respond
Asia.
to that real quickly? I have a response to that. If it's the appropriate time.
Well,
did you?
go ahead. I don't care.
Well, I was going to say that Catholicism and the original Christians, like the Judean Christians and all of that, is not that's not the Christianity of European imperialism and the Industrial Revolution.
It is.
We're talking about.
That's what.
No. We're talking about
America was created. That's we left
talking
Europe to get here, so we can
we're
actually
talking
practice
about
our religion.
Post-Reformation Protestantism,
like Martin Luther kind of thing.
Yeah. What I'm saying is Martin Luther. This is where Catholicism started to take a sideline. Catholics were happy to just be rich and fat, sitting and selling indulgences. The thing that really sort of kick-started this whole, let's build a world and make it in our. It started after Martin Luther, where Protestantism spurred. That's who the Pilgrims were. That's who this sort of God helps those who help themselves. This sort of idea that wealth and fortune is how you know you're doing good in the eyes of the Lord. That's all good old-fashioned Lutheran Protestantism, baptism. Those are the religions of dominance that have grown out of Catholicism, which were perfectly happy selling indulgences and making sure.
Here's the thing:
the
Catholic Church didn't let people read for almost 1,000 years.
Oh, I'm not debating that. Oh,
yeah.
Neither did. Isn't that a Jewish thing too? Like you have to be trained to read the Torah.
I don't know.
Otherwise,
right.
That might be
the religion of dominance was not Catholicism. It was Protestantism. That's what fueled the British Empire. That's what fueled the American westward expansion.
No. Anglican, the Anglican Church. It was created by King Henry VIII, essentially.
Right. That's right. Because he wanted to get divorced, right? So he
wanted to keep divorcing, and he's like, "Oh, screw you, Pope! I'm gonna make my own religion that's just this much different."
Yeah. And the same post-Reformation. Screw you, Pope. I'm not defending Catholicism.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the brand of Christianity is post Catholic.
But I'm saying the Anglican thing, not Protestant at all. It's just, hey, screw you, Pope. I want to go screw more women.
Well, that's
all it was.
Exactly like if you look at again the Church of England, they seem to be kind of like, all right, well, go do what you like, believe in Christ, and you're going to be good. Read the Bible. I don't think they even
encourage that. I honestly don't think they encourage reading the Bible.
I enjoyed growing. Catholicism versus Protestantism. At the beginning of both of them, there's fear. But I think that you'd be more fearful in Catholicism because you're like, oh man, I just looked at that girl and I need to get to praying quick or else I'm screwed. Whereas I was always like, oh well, I'm sorry, and everything's good. I mean, then they ruin it for you. Then they tell you, well, it's intent. So if you just keep doing it and keep apologizing, you're like, oh man, I thought I had this pegged.
True scripture-based Christianity is grace-based and love-based. And you understand that
With a
Jesus,
slight threat of hell, there is a slight threat of hell.
well, not really. If you accept if you accept the gift of salvation from Christ, you say, yes, I'm a sinner. I recognize that. I'm not perfect. And we've gotten so far away from how things used to be that it's hard to understand how they used to be now. But, I mean, so I'm kind of going on a tangent, but what I'm saying is, yeah, you could be saved and still never go to church. You don't have to do anything. You just have to acknowledge it and accept the gift. And I've even written something about this. It's called The Math of Salvation. You can look it up online. But it shows you that there's actual math and logic involved in this. It was following the letter of the law. Like, God won't back out from his promises. So, and he won't contradict himself. So to save us, people that are even the most righteous person in the world is as a dirty rag to God. You know, we're still garbage, even the most righteous person, because we are not good enough. The solution was to defeat the law with the law, and that's what was done with Jesus. When he died on the cross and said, "It is done," or "It is finished," that's when you could, at that time, say, okay, I accept that you became the ultimate sacrifice for everybody's sins, an infinite number of sins, and he covered all of that, and you accept it, and you understand the love that went into that, and that that he sacrificed himself willingly and lived a perfect life for that, to give us all the ability to still be with God after we die. I don't know. That is Christianity. It's grace-based. It's not by the works that we do, or even by the things that we resist doing. It's just that we technically have to accept the gift. Anyway, I went on a big rant. But that's not Catholicism at all.
Yeah, I want to affirm for you, Matt, what you've put together. And Brian, you've gone through. I mean, you grew up religious as well, so I mean, I think we can all kind of, we can at least empathize. I don't think that's the proper word.
See where I'm coming from, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not, for me, it definitely is, there's still the but hell part,
but it's just that no other place was created for us. Hell, I think, if you look at different interpretations, it's just nothingness.
Yeah,
after we die,
I see that.
After we die, there is no place for us to go except for the fire or nothingness. I mean, the fire, that's where people used to put their trash back in the day.
Well, yeah, and I think too a lot of that is, it comes down to, how it's a marketing. Well, earlier you were talking about polling and how and smaller news agencies, and how people will believe the bigger ones first than the smaller ones, and I think it's a marketing challenge to be able to get the mass populace to pick anything up with any modicum of support. I think that the same goes for religion and in the ways that they've been able to communicate. I mean, you read Revelation. There's a lot of Revelation used to be my favorite book to read because of the correlation, the way that I understood that when it says that this flying grasshopper was shooting horns, that it meant bullets from a helicopter, kind of like you can kind of see the story, so you get that cool story out of it. And so that part I get, and I get that our idea of hell in 2015 has a lot more metaphor than the idea of hell in the 1600s, where it's like, no, you will literally get hot pokers and in the eye. And I don't know if you guys watched Stay Tuned with John Ritter, where he buys a satellite dish from Satan and ends up getting sucked into television, and he has to survive 24 hours And so throughout that, Satan is trying to torture them into losing this game of survival. And it kind of, it kind of just it feels hokey. It feels made up in that way because of the fact that there's that fear factor of what this nothingness is. It'd be so much easier, because I can accept it. Like if someone, going in the direction of the way that I believe, when someone says, well, what do you think happens when you die? And my question is, I'm the asshole who answers the question with a question. It's like, well, what was it like before you were born? Well, you don't really, know that, right? So maybe you'll go back there. Like the idea of nothingness, I think at some point, that in that transition, you end up giving up the fear of that nothingness, the fear of the hell, and it's like without the fear, there's really no reason, right? Like you're told throughout life to pick Jesus, so you don't go to that place. It's not like just pick him and everything's good. There's always the consequence side of it. At least, obviously everyone's raised different.
It's not even for me, I used to see it the same way. Now I don't see it that way. I see it as God gave me everything. God created everything. I owe everything to God. And after our whole species screwed up and we were basically trash, he came back to save us. I have nothing but love. Even if I am not saved, I have nothing but love for God. Because
even accounting for the fact that if you believe that God created you, so how did this can be a pretty drawn out, and it goes down to like, okay, so
over for 2,000 years, so
yeah,
keep going for another couple thousand, I think.
Yeah, there's just so many. I think that there's so many questions that end up being answered with either more questions or some assumption of some kind, and I think I'm just okay not knowing the answer. I think that's kind of where I'm at in life right now. It's like, okay, well, that's a really big question. Where did we all come from? Well, I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. So if we can come up with really good observations. We can come up with really cool stories. I mean, even if you go down to the Big Bang, well, where did that stuff come from? Well, are we gonna have to listen to Dr. Krauss? Lawrence Krauss, who I really like, and he's actually going around right now talking about how something can come from nothing, so to speak. So I again, you kind of think like, well, there's that part of me that's like, well, this is all still theoretical. This is all, and that doesn't necessarily mean wrong. It just means that these are questions that we're still asking. So I don't know. Brian, you've been sitting there very, like I said, you go to the meetings. I
run the meeting.
You run the meeting. You are the meeting. So
I am.
I mean, do you?
Actually, that's not true anymore. I actually just resigned from the Ventura Atheist. Here's my issue.
Like a Skeptic Society or something like that.
I founded and ran the Ventura Atheist meeting for almost 9 years. And here's what my take is on all of this, which is to say that I don't condemn anything that either one of you have said about your own personal belief, because I think we're all entitled. Indeed, that is our only right on this planet, to believe what we want to believe. My issue is that we all need to make this world work for everybody that's here. And so what we have to go on when we deal with each other versus what we have to deal with when we deal with ourselves and the meaning that we find for ourselves is that we need to have working solutions that work for everyone, and that means that our beliefs, by us believing them and acting on those beliefs, when we work in tandem with other people that share those beliefs, means that we create institutions, and those institutions have effect on other people. And so my view is that once we realize that our actions have effects on other people on this planet that we can measure and see, then we need to be careful to make sure that we are not inadvertently creating harm. And that's it. I mean, that's it.
Like basically,
ultimately,
don't be an asshole. Basically.
Well, yeah, don't be an asshole. My thing that I've sort of struck on the last couple weeks, and that I've been appending to some of my Facebook posts, is be kind and thoughtful, right? Just be a kind person and think about what you're doing and how it affects other people. And while somebody can believe anything they want about the metaphysical world and conduct themselves in their inner spiritual journey however they would like, and it certainly is their right, if what you're doing affects somebody else, you have to ask yourself the question, is it my right to affect somebody else's life? Because I don't know who they are, I don't know what they think, and certainly their spiritual journey is their own, and I don't have a right to impact that. And so that's my belief, right? And so if everybody lived like that, if we all allowed ourselves to go about our lives doing what we wanted to do, that would be good. But again, when a group of people believe the same thing and then act in a way that affects everybody, we have created an institution. And institutions have a way of creating tyranny. They do. You know what I mean? You can't get 100 people. Yeah, you can't get 100 people in a room that all believe the same thing, regardless of what they believe, and say that those 100 people all acting according to their internal beliefs, but all coordinated in some way, isn't going to have some impact. They absolutely will have an impact. Whether that impact is positive or negative, that's something that we can all watch, right? Did 100 people out picking up trash along the ocean and collecting food to give to the homeless, that has a positive impact. 100 people, holding "God hate fag" signs on a veteran's, around a veteran's funeral, that has an impact. When we create institutions based on our beliefs, we have to be very careful about how those institutions affect them. And we should err on the side of freedom and err on the side of curbing our own outward actions that may affect other people inadvertently. I just think that...
Yeah, I get that too. I think there are obviously ways to continue that conversation, and it becomes, again, a contentious debate because I think that's the problem, is that we all would love to live in this happy medium middle ground where you do you, man, and I do me, and we're all good. And at some point, somewhere down the line, me doing me, you're going to we're gonna collide, and it's either only you can do you or only I can do me, and then what? You look at, just to throw it out, look at the abortion debate. I mean, that obviously the abortion debate is a lot of different things to a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons, but you're not going to convert anybody. I've never been part of a conversation where it's like at the very end anyone was like, oh, you know what, you're right, I am totally changing. It's usually something that's either a long gradual process or a personal experience. That's how homosexuality you can kind of see in the Republican Party. Someone's got a friend, until they experience it. And
I gotta tell you, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, just to finish that point is that that's kind of where the conversation gets frustrating, where it's like, yes, I think all people, Christian, Muslim, not whatever the faith might be or lack thereof, I think that everyone wants that, but at some point there's that I don't like the thermostat at 75. I want the thermostat at 78. It's cold in here. At some point there's that, and so then the question, that's where it gets contentious, because then the question is well, who's doing the harm? Is it the people who have their moral compass as moral relativism, as the popular phrase is, or do people go to a book for it, or do people go to someone who went into the forest and looked into a treasure chest for it? where at some point there's going to be that battle again. And I hate to blame religion for aggression in this world, because we find anything to fight about here, but like, I don't know, it comes back to the gun control debate. What's the solution, right? Like, everyone wants to talk about all good intentions and be on the same page about things, but then when it comes to actually doing the solution part, we're kind of all left shrugging our shoulders, saying, "Well, maybe we could do this."
I hate to do this. I gotta run to the bathroom really bad. So.
You just said that on live stream. So anyway, that's that again. I think that's the same question as, like, just be happy with that, not knowing the answer. Sometimes I get to a point where it's not exacerbation or giving up in any way. It's just kind of like, well, I always tell the story. You're driving down a farm road with a buddy. You both of you are driving along. You look out the window and you see a big red barn. You're like, wow, that was a cool, real big red barn. And you keep driving. You go home and you tell all your friends and family about how you saw this big red barn on the side of the road. Well, meanwhile, the painter is sitting behind a facade of a one-dimensional or two-dimensional barn that he just painted. And so, like, where's the truth? Obviously, I guess in this scenario, the artist sitting behind the two-dimensional facade of a barn, maybe he's got all the truth. But right now, there's all this other truth that's being spread around, and nobody knows the wiser. You could even say the artist didn't even know that those people drove by, and that they thought that it was a real barn, and maybe he didn't think didn't intend for it to be a real. It just seems like this big circular argument that eventually, at some point, all humankind is going to end up killing themselves over. And so, let's see if we can convert as many people into humanists as possible. Maybe that's what it is. Because then everyone can just be like, you do you, and that's really okay.
Yeah.
So,
these are questions that I don't know that in the next 15 minutes we're gonna hash out, but certainly, right. And there are other solutions that people suggest, like the greatest good, or the thing that works with the commonalities, and there are issues that I have with all of that stuff. I just think that all of these things come down to this is a messy world, and we have things that we all have to contend with, and there's no perfect solution, and it's just who can manage to propagate their ideology in the greatest way, lately I've been going through this thing where I don't even know if it's worth arguing with anybody about it.
Again, it's like the abortion debate. At some point you realize you're arguing just to argue. There's really no resolve. There's no amount of clarification that one can provide in these type of things, because there's it's a much bigger issue. It's much bigger, but it's an internal thing. Everyone's got their own. Like, do you like mushrooms? I hate mushrooms. So
right.
Does that mean that we need to ban mushrooms? And if we do, maybe mushrooms are unclean. I don't know.
Yeah, they're grown in shit. And to your earlier answer, it's clearly leave the thermostat at 65, and if you're fucking cold, put on a goddamn jacket.
Yeah, put on some clothes. Because it is cold. You can only see. That's the thing. That's a really good point. Because the logic is you can only take off so much. So it's like, if you want to make it hotter, it's going to be really uncomfortable in here for both of us.
Right. Uncomfortable in another way if I have to keep taking my clothes. It's going to get super uncomfortable for you and me.
To me, right.
As I take off my pants.
To switch back, there's more updates on this, on what's going on here. I mean, nothing as far as data goes. There's no more people dead. It doesn't seem. It seems like people are caught. And I don't know. It doesn't say anything about them still looking for anybody. But I did find this, and I think this is really good to point out, because I think there's a lot of good police officers out there that are doing their job. And they do it damn well. And this guy here, he had his body cam recorded while he was inside the building, and he was getting people out. He was trying to escort people or get people out, and he told these people, said, "I'll take a bullet before you do. That's for damn sure. Just be cool, okay?" And I could just picture that. You can kind of picture that the scene that this person is in, trying to help people out, and you see him trying to keep people calm, trying to keep the situation under control, knowing that he's capable and the guy, like, people are going to look to authority in that situation, hopefully, I guess. And so this is a good thing to go out. This is on the LA Times site. I'm sure it's on YouTube, so I'm sure it's all over the place. And if it's not, this better be, because we do get a lot of things about police stuff that's out there, and it's very easy to make quick comments about how, fuck the police, they're, there's just the man, but there's a lot of really good stories out there as well of them going above and beyond. So anyway, I wanted to put that out there. I thought that was kind of important to put out. All the rest of the stuff just seems like the media. It's the American media loves its 24-hour news cycle, so we're going to be getting tweet updates. We're now getting quotes from politicians at this point, so we know there's nothing else to talk about.
Nothing else to learn today.
Yeah. There is earlier today. There was a quote politician, Chris Murphy from Connecticut, and this kind of goes back to that solutions thing. He said, "Your thoughts should be about steps to take to stop this carnage. Your prayers should be for forgiveness if you do nothing again." So that's kind of interesting. I might err on the side of blaming one side over the other, but I think at the end of the day, this is all about, come together and at least talk about the solutions. I wish there was some way to have some kind of public, open debate, but representative democracy doesn't really provide a venue for that. So anyway, let's. This has been good. This is actually, I really like the flow of tonight's show, because we've been trying. I don't know if anyone who's watching here or watching the recording here participates in our Facebook group, but we post up some things. Sometimes they're like sticks and spokes. We're trying to provoke response from people that we know feel strongly about things. And so you should check us out. If you go to Facebook and search Untitled Personal Podcast Project, you'll see that there's some debate that talks about things like gun control. There's a lot of debate about atheism and talking about who's qualified and who's not, and motives and intentions there. So there's a lot of debate and conversation that continues on after this. That Brian isn't really good at participating online. He's very much our talking head. But Matt is very active inside as well. There you go, put you on blast. The non-technology guy, the guy who has no lower third, does not participate or online. So anyway, with that,
I participate too much. By the way, I need to stop it. That's one thing I've needed to do, and I've been trying to do for the past week, is just stop it.
Just calm.
Yeah, because I go too far.
Should I read a post that you posted up today?
You can. I'll defend it, but I hate having to defend things I post. So that's one reason I need to just stop. I don't need to defend myself all the time.
That's
too much out there. I gotta keep covering all the bases, and it's just exhausting. So, yeah.
Go for it, Brian.
I was going to say, in my defense, I have posted way less lately, and probably the past 2 months, I've just had this, why am I doing it? Why am I getting involved? I can't follow, and it's usually not because I don't want to say what I have to say, as I don't want to, take care of all of the commenters after.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. You just delete it. I don't have the time. Today's a busy day. I don't have. I'll post this up. By the end of the day, people will be crucifying me or something.
I don't even know how many friends I have. It's in the thousands. I may have hit the limit, and I just know a lot of people that I don't even really know. People friend me, and I always say yes. And so my feed is not really my friends. It's just a random collection of all kinds of stuff I post. Just gets all kinds of bizarre comments, and sometimes I just don't have the time to see through, and I'll be aware that something I said has now lived for 2 weeks with dozens of people commenting, and I have no idea what's going on.
I do notice that on your posts a lot.
Yeah,
people will say something and then they'll just fight each other, and all of a sudden, 80 comments later.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at a single one of them. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, a guy apologized for how he acted on my feed. He was like, "Hey man, I just want to say 2 weeks ago I was involved with this thing, got in a fight. I'm really sorry about what all went down." And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. The web, it's time consuming. I mean, I'll be, Matt and I, we've had we make the joke constantly. You have to assign ISBN numbers to the posts because it's like you go through and in your head you're like, oh, rebuttal. Okay, well, let me footnote this. Oh, rebuttal. Let me footnote this. And then all of a sudden you have to copy and paste it because Facebook's telling you that your post is too long or something like that. Right. And let me tell you this: the max, I think the character limit's 5,000 words. So when
we're writing we're writing like term papers.
I know we should be getting paid for this.
Yeah.
I mean therein lies the at least a major motivation for running a show like this, is that the idea is to get these things talked about, and especially with next year coming around, it's always a big election. It's a big election year. It's always a big election year. There's always something that's at stake, and so I think that hopefully this will be an outlet for many more people to come. And fun stuff. Speaking of fun stuff, Brian usually comes along with these cool Brian has a background in running Boy Scout songs and happiness endeavors.
I wish mine today was happy, but so Brian's Show and Tell Corner. My idea was, hey, share something that has in the last week, something you've noticed that has signaled to you that the world has changed. And whatever. I know that sometimes these things can be super bizarre, but just the thing that happened to me today. I feed a snake in exchange for HBO. Let me explain. So we got rid of cable a couple months ago. We got rid of cable and moved to Amazon. And on Amazon, the only way to get HBO is to have an HBO Go account. So I made a deal with my mom. I said, "Hey, Mom, you get HBO on your Time Warner." She didn't have HBO, but it costs her $15 a month. I said, "I'll pay you the $15 a month if you order HBO on your Time Warner cable and give me the password." And my mom is currently caring for a ball python that is my brother's. He's in the Army right now. And so she says to me, "You keep your $15 and instead feed Matthew's snake," which she hates doing. So
yes, because you gotta feed him live, probably.
Yeah,
it's not frozen rats.
Live rodents, right? So my deal with my mom is I feed my brother snake so she doesn't have to, and in exchange she tacks on HBO to Time Warner, and then she gives me the password so that way I can watch HBO at home and not have to have a cable. Okay, so long story short, I've been doing this for 8-9 months. Once a month, go over, feed the snake. And one time I was in Ventura, where there's no Petco, there's only a PetSmart. And I walked into PetSmart, and I was like, "I'd like to buy a medium rat." And they said, "Oh, what are you getting, a pet?" And I was like, "No, it's for a snake." And they're like, "Oh, we don't sell rodents for snake food." What? And that's just a decision that PetSmart has made, that they don't sell rodents for live feeding, right? And I was like, "Oh, I had no idea. I just thought that's what. Who else buys fucking rats? I don't know." Right. There was a movie back in the 70s where somebody had a rat for a friend, but other than that, who buys rats?
Weird
right?
Science, maybe. Yeah.
Right. So I was thinking, Ben. So anyways, I was like, okay, weird, fine, whatever. This is not my snake. I don't have a snake. My brother has a snake. And so I just think it's a normal thing. But apparently there's this whole movement where I'm sure it's started in the animal rights movement, in the compassion movement, where people don't feed snakes live rodents anymore. You're supposed to feed them frozen.
Yeah, frozen rodents.
Rodents. And the frozen, I guess, is much more humane, killing or whatever. So I walk into but PetSmart doesn't sell live rats for snake food, but Petco does. And so I've always gone to Petco to buy the snake, except for today when I walked into Petco. I said I'd like to buy a medium rat, and they said, okay, we have a medium rat.
Did you say it just like that, or did you say, one medium rat, please?
No, what actually happens is I go into the register, I'm like, hey, I need assistance over in the rats, and then I wait by the rats, and a couple minutes later, and I was like, one medium rat, please.
Do you pace? Do you, like, put your hands behind your back and pace and, like, look at which one you want? Like when you're going to get a live lobster.
Pick them out like a lobster. Like, oh, that one, please. He amuses me. No, they just get whichever. They just give you whatever rat they get, you know, or right. No, sometimes
you don't hear the snake complaining, right?
Well, you're supposed to get the rat that's the same size as the largest part of the snake, and so sometimes it's like, oh, that rat's too big or whatever. So today they said, just be aware that we are no longer ordering live rats, and that we will discontinue live rats after the day. So today,
so Petco has jumped on.
So Petco is now no longer well, PetSmart, you can go buy a rat, but
you just can't tell them it's for food.
I guess you can't tell them, but you know, I couldn't go in there and make, or they'd be like, oh,
now you're participating in this.
But even Petco, even though they overtly sell rats for food, you still have to sign a piece of paper that says you will not mistreat the rat. And it's that you have to sign it, you have to put your phone number on it. It says, you know, like it was a puppy, you have to promise that you're not going to hurt the thing. And I got no, because I'm not going to hurt the thing.
So
the snake is gonna kill and suffocate it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I will treat it humanely for the next 20 minutes of its life.
Let me tell you a story. The quick story. A friend of mine had a albino ball python, and she used to go get live rats, presumably from Petco, or PetSmart rather. And so what would happen is that the rat being alive, the snake would come and try to do its strangling thing, and then the rat would start biting the snake.
Yes.
And so what she had to do is she had to take a plastic coat hanger and put it in the rat's mouth as the snake, so the rat wouldn't harm the snake. Like, that's dedication. I can't. That's too much for me. I couldn't. I just had to. I couldn't actually watch it. I just had. She told me that's what she had to do.
That's cheating. That's cheating.
Yeah.
Let the rat bite the snake.
Let nature do its thing, right? Yeah.
What I have learned about this process, because again, my mother and I are both we have been dragged into caring for the snake. My brother joined the army. He left home. He left a snake at the house, so we take care of it for him.
Escaped yet? Usually, there's an escape story in this.
Yeah, no, it's been well cared for, but. You know, what I have learned is that we went through this year and a half ago where the snake wasn't eating for months and months, and we'd put this rat in with the snake, and the snake just didn't touch the rat, and we would just leave the rat there, and the rat eventually it didn't do it, like it was just hanging out, and we think there was one time, like, hey, and there was a point at which my mom was feeding the rat to keep it alive because the snake was not interested or whatever. We think what happened was there was one point at which a rat bit the snake, and the snake was like, "Oh, fuck that," you know. And I don't think that snakes, as I understand it, all of these actions are instinctual, right? It's not like the snake is saying,
"It's like getting pissed off."
Well, it's not like the snake is like, "I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat that rat because I'm hungry." It's that the snake is just a creature of habit. So it's not thinking, if I don't eat that rat, I'm going to starve to death. It's that, hey, the last time I bit that rat, it fucking hurt because it bit me back. So fuck that rat. So the snake went for about 6 months without eating anything and then got over it or whatever. But I have seen stories and stuff online where people will leave the rats in with the snakes, and then the rats kill the snake and eat the thing because the snake it's almost like all of the attack mode is instinctual and it's not done in self-defense. And so what happens is the rat are hanging out in these snake cages for a couple days and they get hungry, and there's 5-6 pounds of snake meat over there, and so the rats will eat the snake. Anyways, you can look this up on the internet. Look up pictures.
Well, it's like look at like mongoose. Mongoose is like just an oversized rat, and that's what they eat. They eat snakes.
Yeah,
and now there's all these mongoose
so,
in Hawaii.
Anyways, Petco, what they said to me today was we are discontinuing carrying live rats. We will still continue to have frozen rats, but there is an availability issue, and at least 3 different employees along the way, the manager, the person that helped me with the snake, and the cashier, all said the same thing, which must be their company line, which is it's an availability issue. And what I'm used to looking through corporate bullshit, like to me that says somebody along the way decided that it was unethical for them to carry live rats.
Yeah.
Whether it was themselves or the company that provided them, the supplier or whatever, that basically said, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. If people want rats as friends, you can come get a rat friend. But if you want rats as food, if you want
rat friend,
if you want a rat friend like Splinter or somebody.
Yeah, rats didn't stop mating or anything,
Right. Oh, yeah. Rats. We're out of rats. No, there's plenty of rats, but they're just not going to sell them to us anymore.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like Australia would love to export their rats.
It's like I'm torn because it's not my fucking snake. And this snake has been particular before. Like I said, it's gone months and months without eating. We know that the snake is kind of particular. And so I don't know that we're going to be able to transition this snake to eating frozen rats. And also that seems to me like a thing that somebody would do who really loves their snake. And me and my mom are not somebody who are super into loving
We're
this
just
snake.
here, man. We're just here.
We're just keeping it alive till my brother gets home. But it's like to transition it to eating frozen rats, and you gotta have the rat and you gotta defrost because it's not gonna eat an icicle rat. You gotta defrost the thing, so leave it out on the counter for a couple hours, and then to put it in there and to wiggle it around to get the snake to entice. I know that my mom and me are not going to do that process. So it just when I say zeitgeist, this was like this. Wow, something has really changed here, and the attitudes about animal well-being are such that the major chains are not engaging in this process and having a snake and feeding it. I mean, I grew up. I had a bunch of metalhead friends. I mean, having a snake was just like a thing. You know what I mean? Super familiar to me.
Right. Either a snake or an iguana of some kind. Or,
right, those kinds of
tarantula.
Pets. I knew a lot of dudes that wore leather jackets and studs. Having a snake in the room was just like a thing,
Right.
And
Right.
it's like it's a new world.
On that, mine's kind of a cop-out, but this did come to mind because I was listening, and every year I listen to it on NPR. They have the people from the American Heritage Dictionary come on and say, here are all the new words that got added to the American Heritage Dictionary, and a lot of times, in fact, last year there were a lot of teen type words or like LOL type things that ended up in the American Heritage Dictionary. But this year there were some words that actually surprised me, and I don't know if this kind of qualifies. I think that there's words here that we've used churrasco, which I think I'm saying incorrectly. You go to Brazilian barbecue, they got the meat on the skewers. So that was not in the American Heritage Dictionary until this month. They just added it in there for 2015, or maybe this year. It doesn't necessarily say this month.
What was it again?
Churrasco. Or Churrasco. Yeah.
Yeah. I know it from the establishment, which is a churrascaria. Which are like these Brazilian and Argentinian meat restaurants where you just walk in they bring out big slices and they just chop it off for you on the plate.
Now I want to go. It's Samba, Cravings. The Cravings I think is the closest one.
I don't think there's anything like that in our county. You got to go to LA for that.
Yeah, you have to go. I think, like I said, I think the closest one is off Topanga called Cravings. And
that sounds good.
That's all we don't have here. We don't have Brazilian stored meat cutting place, and we don't have Ethiopian.
Yeah, right. Ethiopian food would be really
good. Or live rats.
Live rats. You can't get a good meal around town.
Ventura County is seriously lacking.
Got to fight for food. One of the other things that was on there was Humble Brag, which I thought was already a thing. Listicle, which I don't know if is. I mean, I see Listicle all the time in my demographic, the business that we do. Listicles are. Actually, no. BuzzFeed. Every BuzzFeed article that's 1, 2, like the top 10 thing. That's a listicle.
Yeah.
That used to be a marketing thing where it's like, I'm going to teach you in 10 steps what you need to do to run a business or something like that. And Tosock as well. Co-sleeping. That's apparently a new term, which is the practice of parents and one or more infants or small children sharing a bed while sleeping.
Really? That's a term? That's crazy to me.
But I think this definition needs to be expanded a bit because I think that co-sleeping is used more for like my kid's 8 and is still asleep in my bed. I think, or I don't even know what a regular age is to not.
No, co-sleeping.
Let's just say infants.
So this is the co-sleeping generally refers to small children because the stated like the best practice is that your kid should not sleep in bed with you. They should be
roll over them or something, or
they point to most of the incidents of SIDS is related to co-sleeping, kids suffocating in bed, and we call it SIDS out of politeness,
right?
But it's really kids being suffocated by sleeping with their parents. And so the stated like best practice, which you're supposed to do, is get used to your children sleeping in their own crib or their own bassinet. But it's when you take your infant into your own bed, which doesn't, again, culturally for me, like as a Mexican, it's strange that seems strange, right? It's just kids sleeping in the bed is a very common thing. The medical establishment says that it's not good, but it's been something that's on my radar for a very long time. So it's surprising that it's just being entered into the Oxford English.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Well, this is the American Heritage Dictionary, which isn't necessarily. I mean, Oxford Dictionary probably would be a little bit more scrutinizing about bringing in words. I mean, you think that churrasco or I'll never pronounce it correctly, but you think that would just be relegated to this being another language, but I guess we don't really have.
Yeah, that it's entered English, right? At this point, it's become common enough.
But I guess that's English anyway. I mean, they have a thing in here, bibimbap, which is a Korean dish of rice topped by cooked seasoned vegetables. Has meat. It's basically a rice bowl. But there's a term. The term is bibimbap, and now that is now in our dictionary. It's just weird that these things are here. Doxing made it in here. Dox is now a thing.
Very good.
Finally.
Yeah, and I noticed. So last year, and this was from the actual article that I was listening to. It was Here and Now. That's right. So Here and Now is not an NPR program. It's its own thing. That's produced for NPR. I don't know. Anyway, NPR is a very awesome. I love the things that NPR that you get access to with NPR. But last year, Snarky was added in, but Snark isn't scheduled to be added in until next year. So snarky
That's
was a
odd.
word before snark was a word. Snark is technically not a word according to the American Heritage Dictionary. So I thought that was interesting. So there you go. There's a sign of the times, maybe just for 2015. Even words that we've been using for many years are now all of a sudden they're things. So, Matt, what about you? What's your story that you? This is a sign of the times.
Well, because of the pandemonium I hear outside, I'm going to have to probably leave soon. So I'm just going to leave you with this. This is what I think explains a lot of our times, like the selfishness, the violence, the negatives in society that we see popping up more and more now. It all comes down to you guys have probably heard versions of this, but there are two wolves in your head, one good, one evil, and they're fighting to the death. Which one wins? It's the one you feed the most. And so if you're consuming a lot of negative media, that's going to form your mind the most. And I think that's what is influencing most people. They're consuming a lot of garbage that is bogging them down. Anyway, I got to go, and I'll see you guys next time.
All good. Well, thanks for coming on. I guess I was going to see if you wanted to promote, but later. Bye, Matt.
See you later, Matt. That's got to be it for me too. We're over almost 2.5 here.
Well, as far as broadcast time, I think that's why I kind of let it run long. We started about 7:23, so I figured let it go. But yeah, this is a good wind down. As usual, I always thank the guests, but I really do appreciate you guys coming on because you've been on every episode so far, and you are always welcome to come back. The amount, I think, even in ourselves, to get a little bit sentimental here, is that like we've all kind of grown as this has gone. When we first started, it was like we were like Fox News. Everyone's just like and now I think that through the conversation that has happened, even when it has been slightly even contentious, I think that it's kind of built up, and I think it's really been valuable. I think clearly we're getting the traffic, we're getting agreement in the form of views. We have people that have been watching our show. I don't know if you can see the stats on the bottom, but we have, you don't get any of that. I get all the motivation. I'm like, oh yeah, right on. Yeah. I want to, so yeah, I just, this is my sense of appreciation, Matt, when you watch this later, if you watch this later, thank you as well. With that, anything new, anything going on promoting? Do we want to talk about maybe a little bit about next week?
Okay, well, hey, next week we are having a music episode, Sin Chones, which is Spanish for no underwear on. The great cover band. If you've been out in a bar in Ventura in maybe the last 2 years, you've seen these guys. They do great covers, super fun dudes, and they were gonna be on tonight, but we thought, it was such a heavy topic with so much to talk about. We asked them if they would be willing to push it to next week. They were thankful for an extra week to prepare, but I think the plan is that I'm going to host them here in my studio, which is also known as my garage, and I've got some I'll mix them all, and we're going to have a live performance by Sin Chones, and they're excited. Alfred and I think Willie Love is playing with them. I don't know if they've got a drummer, but 2-piece, maybe 3-piece, and they're going to play some tunes. And we're going to talk about live music in Ventura.
Right on, yeah. That's and so for anyone watching, anyone that wants to contribute, we are. I'm kind of, about a year ago, I think it was the Reporter. I think you were working for the Reporter. Maybe it was a couple years ago. They had a state of music in Ventura County, and this might have been a web, like something they posted on Facebook, but. I've been wanting to for a while to kind of talk about where music has gone in this county and how the venues have changed and how maybe even some of the Brian, you might even have some insight on this. During next week. Yeah,
we're gonna write a book about it.
I mean,
it's been a particular.
I didn't, and I'll bring this up again next week. I didn't know that the doors had to be closed on Main Street for some of the bars after certain times because people were complaining, and
It's a world.
It's a lot has changed. So
it's a world unto itself.
And I might have to ask. I might have to pick some brains about why Tool isn't invited or isn't allowed to or doesn't want to come back to the Majestic. I've heard my rumors, but we'll talk about that. Brian, anything else? Anything personal you want to pass on, Brian?
I would say that my thing I've been involved with for a long time is Camp Quest West. It's a summer camp for secular youth, but more specifically the kids of secular families. We don't label the kids themselves. We leave that to them. But we put on a great summer camp, a sleepaway summer camp experience. Right now, we're currently raising money to make sure that any kid that asks for financial assistance gets it. If they can't afford the full price of camp, we want to make sure that they can still come and we help them out. We're raising that money right now. You can go to west-campquest.org to find out how to contribute. And that's it. I tweet at Brian Para. Website is brian-para.com.
I'll go ahead and put the link in the show notes to, you said it was West Camp Quest. This is the
West.
Where people can go. I've got campquestwest.org.
Oh, well, then we probably
Google
bought that
search.
one too. That sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Well, we'll put that in there, and you guys, people can check this out. I really like that. Growing up, I went to a lot of summer camps, and we did a lot of fundraising to make that happen because there are, it's expensive. It's expensive to be a kid and actually get more than just the basic education. So this is good stuff. So check that out. Oh, and here's a good thing. This is actually something that you mentioned before and post on Facebook, is that they are connected with Amazon Smile. And I actually use Amazon Smile all the time. So the way that you use it is you just go to smile.amazon.com and you got to register your Amazon account with it. So you can actually go through and select Camp Quest West, and they get 0.5% of the total amount of your order. It's a perfect time to do this too, with Christmas being around. There's still a lot of gift shopping going on. So if you do anything on Amazon, smile.amazon.com, and I'll put that in the show notes too. I've been signed up to the World Wildlife Fund for the longest time, but maybe I'll switch it over. I've got some purchases to go. That's the other good thing about it, is that you can switch it any time, and that's always great. So there you go. Yeah, that's a little double promo. As my lower third down here says somewhere, I'm the founder of One Website Please. We help small businesses get their message out there. We help medium businesses do the right thing online, and we help large businesses spend their money. So that's what we do as digital advisors, kind of the ultimate nerd that you call who needs an answer to just about anything technology related, specifically for the internet. Again, you check us out at onewebsiteplease.com. Read all about us there. We have a new website coming out that's actually being designed. We're looking forward to a release date in the new year, coming along with like 110 video walkthroughs for how to do certain things online. And we're doing also a weekly show, interview, a monthly webinar. There's all kinds of new stuff that's coming up. So you can just go to our website, sign up to the newsletter there, or follow us on pretty much all the social media channels, and you'll find the updates there. Again, I'm Greg Daniels here with Brian, the returning host, and Matt, who has taken off, but we'll probably see them again next week. Until then, go out, learn something, protest, and give us some information. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks so much, Greg.